I've been looking forward to this ever since you accepted. I think even though I was late getting these questions, I already had them in my head what I was going to talk about. But I'm just so excited and elated and humble that you have not only taken the time to bring light to Fire in Little Africa, but just to break bread and sit down with me and talk today. So I got a couple questions
Okay.
for you, and we're just gonna get into it. So the first one is, when and how did you fall in love with music?
I fell in love with music. I mean, I don't know if I can actually remember when, but I grew up in Tuskegee, Alabama and Atlanta, but my early childhood was in Tuskegee. And I'm first generation Ethiopian American. So I was an Ethiopian little girl in Tuskegee with the name Ethiopia and probably felt like a bit of an alien as a young kid, but music was everything to me. I think it was like my way of relating to people. I loved, I would sing all the time. I was one of those kids that would like journal and write in her diary always. I was really into lyrics. Um, so I mean, I was like in talent shows and all those things. I just loved music, singing. And for me, I think I knew at an early age that music was a big like point of connectivity between people. And it's how I like friendships. We were big fans of artists and stuff. So music has always been a big part of my life, but I loved it from the beginning.
Mhm. What music did you grow up on? Like, who's some artists that you
Okay.
just?
I mean, so I remember my father playing like Anita Baker and Regina Bell and then Whitney. I remember the first time I got a stereo system and
Mm.
getting her CD with my stereo system, and Whitney was everything to me. I love Janet, I love Madonna, I remember loving like Genesis and things like that. But my older brother, it was NWA, it was
Mhm.
all of that when I was a really young girl. But I moved to Atlanta right before I went to middle school, and I remember
How was that transition?
it was crazy because Tuskegee was such a small town, right? Like I was I went to all through elementary school. I was with my same class that I started preschool with, and it was probably 12 of us.
Hmm.
And then I moved to Atlanta and I'm going to public school. It's probably like 300 kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but Atlanta an amazing time when I think about it because I ended up going to school with Chris Cross. Do you remember Chris Cross? Of course you remember Chris
Of
Cross. Right?
course.
They were in class with me, right? And then there was like
Wow.
ABC and
Were they wearing their clothes backwards in school too?
but yes, yes they were. Yeah, they were. So it was, and I was a fan of all of these groups, right? And so on the weekends we would go to the roller skating rink and you would see the artists, the same people you were seeing in videos, you were seeing
Mm.
at the skating rink or at school with you. And so it was this weird thing where the music scene was just kind of around me as a kid. And that's because of what Atlanta was. So Jermaine Dupri, Dallas Austin, and of course LaFace Records were all there and developing talent, signing talent. JD had Criss Cross, Dallas Austin had like ABC, and he was producing TLC's records. And JD was also producing TLC's records. And clearly they were a lot older than me, but I looked up to all of them. Like I would get all the fanzines and I would read about them, and I was kind of, just immersed in the music community there. And it blew my mind that it was right around me, that these artists and these writers and producers were like from where I was from. You could run into them at the mall, or you would be, in an interview, you would see them talking about certain neighborhoods and you're like, wait, that's right down the street. So that,
Yeah.
that was amazing. Um, but I would say TLC, Outkast, I was, a big Fugees fan.
Hmm.
Loved Missy, the whole Timbaland. Aaliyah was everything to me. So that was like my era
Hmm.
of music that probably shaped me the most.
So when did you know, like, oh, I'm ready to get into this music game? Like, I'm just all in? Like when, like, do you remember that moment?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was in high school, and so I went to Benjamin E. Mays High School in Southwest Atlanta. Shout out to Southwest. That's where I was from. And
Rep your shit.
you have to sit still there. But my freshman year in high school, I had to take a career planning class. It was a requirement for graduating, and it was great because they had us take it our freshman year, and you had to choose 3 different careers. And I remember every career that I listed had something to do with music, right? I didn't know about the different careers in the music business, but I think I wrote publicist or producer. I think I may have written production company or some along those lines, because it was all I knew of, right? And my teacher, Mrs. Baker, she came to me and she was like, I'm going to have someone come and speak to the class. When she gets here, you need to talk to her, right? And so it was a woman named Shanti Das, who was an alumni of Mays, and she was the head of promotions for LaFace Records at the time. And I remembered she came to the class and she was young, she was fly, like back then the style was like baggy clothes or whatever, but but I was like,
what type of school? What type of high school? Predominantly black high school?
Yeah, all black. So
you had a black teacher too?
My whole childhood was all black everything.
Okay.
Yeah, it was all black everything, going from Tuskegee, and then moving to Atlanta, and the part of Atlanta where I grew up was all black. And I ended up changing high schools my sophomore year and going to a mixed high school that had, more diversity or whatever. But my freshman year, I was at Mays. So Shanti came and spoke to my class, and I was like, I want to be just like her. She did radio promotion. She talked about her career, and she was influential in TLC's, campaigns and Outkast. And I was like, I want to be just like her. So I went to speak to her after she spoke at our class, and I just asked her if I could shadow her for a day. She said yes. My parents said okay. And I went and did it. And the day that I went, I remember her assistant was out sick. And I would helped answer phones or whatever. And I guess I did a good job at it. So she was like, you can come anytime. That was it. I was taking the train there, doing it. I was probably stalking her a little bit, to be honest, but I just got the bug for, it opened up my eyes to the people behind the scenes in music, right? When I was at LaFace, it was a major label, in the city of Atlanta. It was in Buckhead, in this huge, high-rise building. And it was just all these incredible Black executives, marketing, A&R, promotions, creative, and it was thriving. And I saw all these incredible Black women that were leading the charge. LA would be walking around, and I became like a kid that got to be a fly on the wall in a lot of rooms that I probably normally wouldn't be able to get in, but because I was so young, I got a lot of access, and I soaked it up. And I reflected on how much of a privilege that was, because I never questioned my own trajectory in my career, because I saw excellence and greatness with these Black executives that were just around, and they ended up being the people that I was a fan of, so that was definitely a huge blessing.
So you mentioned Dallas Austin and JD and LaFace. Can you talk about, because I think when people think of Atlanta starting, they always think about those folks. But can you talk a little bit about what life was like before they came on the scene? What was the culture of Atlanta like before the Dallas Austins and JDs and LaFaces of the world?
I can't really speak to it. I don't know. I know what I've read, that it was a thriving Black city. Clearly Atlanta was, instrumental in the civil rights movement. And it's interesting to think about, where I grew up, which was a mix of, very well off, upper class, Black people. And then, down the street, you would have the projects or whatever. And then we all went to school together in whatever district we were in, right? But you got to see the beauty of Blackness across the board. Like you got to see very well off attorneys and doctors and families that were thriving, and even entrepreneurs, that had their own businesses. And I remember reading something that LA spoke about when he came to visit Atlanta, I think he was meeting with producers, that him and Babyface just knew they needed to plant their feet there, and build their business there because of the thriving community, Black community that existed there. They saw a lot of opportunity.
So with this idea of finding little Africa and Tulsa, although you haven't necessarily been to Greenwood, to Black Wall Street, is there any sense or any emotions that you feel like similarities between the buzzing, increased like landscape of Atlanta in comparison to like Tulsa?
Yeah, absolutely. And even now, because I think, the idea of being a real entrepreneur and building business and community and people locking arms together to be very deliberate and intentional about it. I would say that that's also happening in Atlanta in a, again, more intentional way. And it does remind me of Tulsa in many ways. And I'll say, even listening to the project and the songs that were, listening to the music definitely feels like what I know the soul of Atlanta to be also, but I just think that's the soul of our community. You know what I mean? And you hear it in the lyricism, the storytelling, the vocals, and the production. I have to say, like, the production is really strong, and it's not one type of hip hop at all, but you hear the range. So yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities there.
So since you brought it up, I was gonna wait a little bit later, but like, what are your thoughts on the music? Like, do you have a favorite? You got a couple that you like?
No, listen, it's what, 20 songs?
21, yeah.
21 songs. Here we go. Okay. It's a lot of music. It's all really good. There are it's a lot to choose from. I know, wait a minute, I think I made a note about some Been Through It All, Elevators, Drowning, Top Down. But there's so many of them. It was a lot. I was like, I can't just choose. There's the project is actually really dope. I mean, not like I'm surprised. I can only imagine the talent that exists there.
Absolutely.
And I hear it through the songs. And how many artists participated?
I think so. It's roughly 60 artists that participated. Yeah. I think maybe 35, 40 made the album.
Yeah. So it's really strong. And I think the exciting thing for me is for us to be able to highlight that,
Absolutely.
There are no barriers anymore when it comes to music and breaking talent, or you have to be out of Los Angeles or out of New York or even out of Atlanta. The thing about Atlanta is that the city and the community has continued to grow because cost of living was, pretty reasonable. And also people felt like as Black people, you could flourish in the city. That was all, over the years, that's been it. So you have also the colleges and universities that are here, right?
It's important. All the HBCUs and yeah, absolutely.
And it's an international city too. So you have a lot of, people of different descents that are in the city as well. So you hear it all in the music.
Absolutely. So we're gonna come back to the music a little bit later, but I wanna focus on you for right now. So you interned at LaFace Records, and I don't know why people keep doing this. They keep saying chairman. Like, why they can't say chairwoman? Like, I say
chairwoman.
Okay.
It's chairwoman. We just got to correct them. It's like retraining.
Absolutely.
Retraining everybody. Yeah.
So it's just how do you feel being in the role that you are now, and particularly being a Black woman? Like, what obstacles have you overcome? What have you had to endure to get to this point? And has it been everything that you imagined?
So I come from again, I started interning young, but I found my passion within music probably around the age of 22, 23. I'm 41 now. And before that, I mean, I had done publicity, I had done promotions, party planning. I did it all. But A&R, making records, identifying talent, helping to develop them, helping people make their records, that is what I have loved. And it's what I did. I was at the music publishing company within Universal Music for over 12 years. So I was at Babyface's publishing company first for 2 years, and then I moved to New York and worked at Universal and been there ever since, and then transferred to being at a label. But the core of it, and my passion was always about music and talent and making great records and supporting, these gifted individuals to bring dope music to the world. And I was kind of like head down, just doing it, and success would happen. But I felt like that is the result of when you do great work, success happens. But I was never focused on like wanting to get to being a CEO of a label, or I didn't operate from that place, which that's not a bad thing to do that. But for me, it was always about the passion, and then you grow, you have success, and you're able to like move up in your career, but you're also now running a business, and there's more responsibility that comes with that. And there's also, developing other great executives and people that are contributing and helping talent in the same way. So, there have been many trials and tribulations because you're running businesses. And then I got the opportunity to be at the helm of Motown, which,
How did that come about?
Think about the gravity of that. It came about when Sir Lucian Grange, who was the head of all of Universal Music Group, I met him while I was at the publishing company, and he had taken over UMG. And we met, I played him music, and I just talked about my career. Probably a year or two later, I got the opportunity to be an SVP of A&R at Motown, but I was still heading creative for the publishing company. So I did that for about 2 years. I had a dual role between the label and the publishing company because it's all under Universal Music Group. And I was between New York and LA almost every other week. It was intense. Wow. And so finally in 2014, they made me president of Motown. I was president of creative or urban creative at the publishing company. And then in 2016, I just focused on the label because it was just too much on my plate. But he was the one that gave me that opportunity. He's the one that made me president of Motown and supported me. And, Motown had not really been as successful in a really long time. They had, over the years, things changed within the organization or whatever. And so the goal was to help bring it back to life. And at that time, the music industry was actually like in a tough spot, right? Streaming hadn't kicked in. So streaming probably kicked in around 2016. So between 2014 and 2016, it was extremely challenging. And just the weight of Motown and the legacy and the iconic artists and the iconic work that was done. And I remember being in this place where I felt like I almost had to not prove myself, not me personally, but like prove our value, meaning music, right? Of hip hop and R&B. It was just this pivotal time in the industry because it wasn't being monetized. We know culturally our music was always thriving, but from a business standpoint, you didn't see that when you're looking at your P&L. When you're looking at those black and white numbers, the iTunes download store wasn't reflecting the culture and what was really happening around the world. Cut to 2016, SoundCloud, streaming kicks in, Spotify is here.
Right.
And Apple Music is here, and probably towards the end of 2016, 2017, we saw the data that came in, and they got to see which genres were dominating and which artists were thriving. And it was all hip hop. Yeah. So that really helped change the game for the work that we had been doing. But I had been able to plant some seeds, and I had like 3 pillars for what I wanted to focus on for Motown, right? It was about signing great artists and talent, artist development, because that was the core of what Berry Gordy did always. But also, I thought it was so significant to highlight other entrepreneurs that were operating in the same way that Berry Gordy did in 1959, right? And how can Motown be a platform for other entrepreneurs, other Black entrepreneurs that were building their businesses? There were a lot of independent labels in the marketplace. And I've always signed talent out of Atlanta my whole career. Most of my writers, producers, and artists, it's all just naturally just happened. And so I had done some label partnerships. I did one with QC back in 2015. And, we've been very intentional in helping to grow that business and those artists and be real partners, because the ripple effect of that is massive. When you talk about inspiration or in real time, young Black kids being able to see people from where they're from build their business, and they're seeing it through social media, and they're, Motown has been a part of that. And it was by design, because what happened in 1959 and what they did then is the same thing that's being done now. Mm-hmm. And I don't ever want us to have to be in a place where we feel like we have to prove ourselves again. Right. And so I think if we can continue to tell our stories of what we've done, right, and show that, it goes a long way. So, entrepreneurship and great songs, those were the 3 pillars for what we've been doing. And we find, Motown was under Capitol Music Group. And with this, with my promotion, we're now able to be a standalone label, our own business that is fully staffed and fully supporting talent. And, there's a lot of success that's happened that's been able to get us to that place. So I'm really grateful and excited, because it's been a journey. And for me, Motown is legendary and known around the world. And so we should continue to acknowledge that by supporting other artists and other businesses.
Sure. And before I go any further, again, congratulations, because that's big. I mean, it's big for the culture. It's big for people that look like me, but it's also like more important for like Black women. Like, I don't think you understand like how proud I am to see you in that role, because I can only imagine like what you've been through, and to see you shining on the other side, and like you chairwoman, like.
Yeah, no, I'm really proud. And I know it's not, again, I was a kid, and I remember, so when I was like 16, I interned at Elektra Records, and Sylvia Rhone was the chairman and CEO of Elektra Entertainment Group at the time, right? So she had like En Vogue and a bunch of artists, Metallica, but she was that woman, Black woman. And I remember reading about her, and I couldn't believe that she was a Black woman that was the CEO. I was 16 back then when that happened.
It's crazy.
And it's actually really crazy to think about the fact that, because there were incredible Black women that I looked up to, that I believe should have been able to rise and get to this level that came before me. And so I know that this is much bigger than me. I am extremely proud, and I understand the responsibility, but the responsibility is also in lifting others up,
Yeah. And I think, we see Fine Little Africa as that body of work that is bigger than us. Like, obviously, artists want to get access into the industry, of course, and we're doing the best with what we have. And now with Motown involved, it's like, okay, this exponentially can change some lives for people. And so my question is like, could you talk a little bit about your vision for Fire Little Africa? Like when you look at it, when you hear it, what made you like take a chance on little old Greenwood? Like what were we doing that just made you like, I need to take this project on?
It was purposeful. It was necessary.
Mhm.
And the fact that you guys took on the responsibility of telling the story of your community, but also creating a platform for the talent there. I got what it was immediately. It was like no question when it was first presented to me, because it was about you all as a community doing it, honoring your ancestors, honoring everything that happened there, but not being ashamed, being proud to move forward and carrying on in a positive way, creating legacy. I got it from the moment it was presented. I was like, Motown has to be a part of this, but to hear the music and to understand how much talent is there, that's really exciting to me, for us to be a part of helping to highlight that. You hear it in the music, how proud you all are to be from Tulsa. You know what I mean? It's and again, I think there are no barriers anymore. So if we can help shine a light on the talent that's there and the music that's there and the work that you guys have been doing, that part is exciting to me.
So, yeah, I was on a call as we were, working through this deal, and Mark Byers, Lindsay Lanier were on the call, and they were like, "Hey, we want to do a licensing deal. We want to go do it through Black Forum." And I remember raising my hand, like, "What is Black Forum?" And
Right.
when they told me about, MLK being on Black Forum, and it has been in existence in a while, and we're thinking about, revamping it.
Yeah.
I was just like really overwhelmed with emotion. Like obviously I didn't show it, but I was just like my stomach was just turning. And so I just had a question, like, how do you plan to utilize Black Forum, this Fine Little Africa with Black Forum? Like
Yeah.
what was the whole reason for the connection? Like kind of talk through that.
So Motown had these subset of labels under, Motown. Mr. Gordy had done that. He had a country label. There was Tamla, and there was Black Forum. And we were aware of this, for several years, but we always understood Motown had cultural relevance and a responsibility to show up for the community. But last year, we were like, we need to really launch Black Forum with the intention of allowing other spoken word artists, activists, poets, etc., to have a platform as well. And we really felt like that was necessary. And so we'd had this plan to relaunch it this year. And it was going to start, and it has started with us re-releasing some of the key works that came out previously. So we just re-released Elaine Brown's, her work that came out years ago. And there was so much great, and we're doing like, merch along with it or whatever, but we're doing key deals with the people who are being the storytellers for our time. And what's happening in today's time, I think it's really important to make sure we're documenting that also and continuing in the legacy. And so when this came about, it just felt like the synergy was absolutely perfect. And you don't really question that. And it was like, really, if you all felt the same way or not, we wanted to introduce it. And the fact that you got it immediately means it was all meant to be. So we have some really, really big plans around Black Forum going forward, but this is like the first thing,
That's amazing. And definitely when you talk about the synergy, the spirit, and just like being led, the discernment, I think that speaks directly to how we've been, our approach in regards to Fine Little Africa. And so, you know, Motown Hitsville is coming to
Mhm.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so my next question is, how old were you when you first learned about Black Wall Street?
How old was I? I had to be in my 20s. I had to be in my 20s because I don't remember. I mean, and I will remember like if I was a kid really knowing that story. I didn't. I think it was probably my early 20s.
Yeah, I was at the age of 24. So imagine being in school for 5, 6+ years, master's, bachelor's, and then after the fact, just now hearing about it. And I live an hour and a half away. So like this is
It's crazy. It's
it's
actually really
crazy.
crazy to think
It's,
about it because I, I can't. They didn't teach it to us. They didn't teach it to us. So we didn't know. And I feel like there are so many people that are just becoming aware, right? Especially last year,
mhm.
the awareness and has become heightened, and people feel more inclined to right the wrongs and all those things, and that's all great because that's how we create change. But it is crazy to think about the way that our history was just completely deleted um, from our education system.
Yeah, it is, and it's unfortunate. And I think that's one thing that we've been like working through, especially like when we told people about Motown, like even with like Motown representatives on the call, it was like I still don't believe it, and I think it's because of a lot of times we're working through and wrestling with trauma that when something good does happen, it's like it's too good to be true, and so I just
Do you feel like you guys are wrestling with trauma still to this day?
oh absolutely, like it's no question. I mean, I've always made the argument that, Tulsa would have been Atlanta if the massacre didn't happen. Like, I stand on that because I think about just all the synergy and the entrepreneurship that was just moving in so many different directions. And so, like, people think about that. People think about economic empowerment
Mm-hmm.
and, the businesses that some of the artists, like their families had businesses on Greenwood, and just not having that economic, backing and support, like people are really struggling out here. So like the fact that in my opinion, the fact that we were making this music with people still working full time, trying to do this music,
Mm-hmm.
trying to sort through this trauma, like it really speaks to the fortitude of and the resilience of Black Wall Street. And like in my mind, it's like imagine if these artists were doing music full time. If you think Feel is amazing, just think about what it would look like if we were able to develop those artists. And so, yeah, I'm definitely excited. Truly grateful just to be able to be involved with this. But I do think there's one thing that I do want to talk to you about is I feel like a lot of times when it comes to artists, people try to separate the artists from the activists as if they can't coexist.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in your eyes, especially in today's time, what roles do artists have to play in activism? And do you feel like artists leading the industry currently are adequately using their platforms?
There's some that are for sure. I think that for some artists, they haven't figured out how they want to show up and use their platform. You realize how much that there still has to be an education on that front. Um, but I've always felt like artists have to make music that reflect the times, right? And I think that is happening. I think that there are artists who can't deny what's happening. They're speaking up and they're creating art that reflects that. I think there are artists who are also creating music to support escapism, right? Like to get people out of the reality of what we know is going on. And so it's been interesting to
Do you
see.
feel like that's activism in a sense too?
I do think joy is a form
Okay.
of activism, and I think
Okay.
that is necessary because, as we all know, if you're constantly in a state of grief and dealing with the trauma, how do you move forward, right? How do you have the energy to move forward? And so, um, there's a bit of a balance, but you can't have escapism without dealing with and working towards making change with what's really happening in your community, right? So the fans that you're speaking to, how are you showing up? And we've had a lot of conversations with that with several of our artists, you know, especially well starting last year when putting records out. But the thing that I thought was really important for us as their label was to really support them and showing how to show up, educating them on how to do it authentically, right? Like not just putting up a post, but what are you do? We have Little Baby, right? That's signed to us with QC, and he created the bigger picture, not because someone told him to go do it. He couldn't walk away from what was happening in his community, what was happening around us. And he was called on by the city, the mayor, when the riots were happening in Atlanta. They wanted him to speak up and say something to calm the kids down. And he knows his influence, and he didn't do it immediately. He chose to go out there and really understand what was happening and feel the people, speak to city council members on his own, but city council members that were closer to his age that could really walk him through how they were feeling, how the community was feeling. And then he created that record immediately, and he spoke his truth in his way. And I don't think people thought someone like him would, right? But that's because they can always see you in a box. And a lot of these artists care. They just have to find a way to show up. It's an interesting time with cancel culture and everything else, so I try not to be that hard on the artist because there's a lot of them out here. It's just how do you support the ones that will really create the music that helps move us forward. But I try not to be that hard on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
Because everyone's on their personal journey of figuring out how to show up.
yeah, and still figuring out who they are as a person too.
Yeah.
Like
And learn
baby's still young, and
Yeah.
So
But I do think activism is absolutely important, right? And
right.
there's a responsibility that we all hold, Yeah.
Right. So staying with that point, in regards to the activism and even the escapism in the context of joy, when you were listening to the Fire in Little Africa album, what did you hear? Did you hear activism? Did you hear joy?
I heard activism. I heard storytelling. I heard a bit of escapism. I heard love. I heard a range of emotions, which the range of emotions is what we're all experiencing, right? I heard grief, sadness. I heard all of it. I heard people popping their shit. Like I heard all of it, which which I love. Which I think that's necessary, and that's those range of emotions and songs that can speak to that. That's truth.
Right. So how do you think the world is going to react to Fire in Little Africa? I mean, obviously with the assets that we have, but just the music, when they sit down and listen to it, how do you feel the world is going to react to this project?
I don't think people will be that surprised that there's so much dope talent out of Tulsa.
Why do you think that?
I mean, listen, we're in a place now in our business where we're seeing dope talent come out of so many different markets. You know what I mean? And so I think that you guys are like standing on the shoulders of those that came before you, and you're doing them proud, and the music is dope. And so I think the world will be very happy and excited, you know what I mean, to hear it. I don't know if they'll be surprised, you know what I mean? But What artists have come from Tulsa in the past? Have there been any
Other than Gap Band, I mean,
okay, okay.
that's kind of it. I mean, Leon Russell, but
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So yeah, and I asked that question because at least from the people that the conversation that we're having, it's always been like Tulsa, Oklahoma, this flyover city state, like no one takes us serious, and so it's just interesting to hear that you think that people won't be surprised, and that's something.
And by the way, I could just be looking at it through my eyes, but I'll tell you, some of the greatest artists have come from small towns across the U.S. and
Like Tuskegee.
like I mean, Lionel Richie, the Commodores were from Tuskegee. That was everything. You know what I mean? Like I'm like people don't. I was super proud to be from Tuskegee, but or even like the fact that like Timbaland and Pharrell and from Virginia, or North Carolina has said, Cole is from Raleigh, North Carolina. And he lives there and is, all about North Carolina and putting on for North Carolina. And, we have an artist from Arkansas who's really dope. And again, I think there are no barriers. I think that what we're doing with Fire Little Africa is telling the story. You all are telling the story of what happened in Tulsa, honoring that and highlighting the incredible talent that's there. And I think that that's beautiful, but I don't believe there aren't any barriers anymore,
Well, there's been a lot of talk in the last year about making the music industry more artist friendly, particularly for Black folks. Do you believe Fire Little Africa is signaling a shift to the rest of the industry that could bring a sea change?
In what way? What do you mean?
I mean, this is a DIY type of culture.
Mm-hmm.
We have 60 artists that are unsigned. And the way I interpret it is that Motown signed the state. They didn't sign a project.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's never been done before. And so, I just 50 unsigned artists, no one has ever heard. Ethiopia comes out of the sky and is like, yep. And it's like, yeah, we doing this. And so just the idea that our social media and content team is like having assets already delivered to your team, and we're collaborating in so many dope ways. Shout out to Chris Davis and my team. But do you feel like the industry will be ready for Fire Little Africa?
I do think they'll be ready. I also think, to the first part of your question, the industry is changing drastically for the better, right? There is so much information out there now. And in many ways, you can do things yourself. And you have an understanding of when you sign to a major label, what your expectations are and what you want from them, which is usually to amplify what you've done and bring it to the world, like to make it bigger, right? But I think you guys have highlighted like the DIY scenario, right? But also your community, you know what I mean? Because I think that we're seeing a lot of artists that will create their own music coming out of their bedroom or whatever, and they'll be in the same city, but people operate kind of on their own mission or whatever. And I think one of the things that really stands out to me about what you guys have done is the way everyone's locked arms for a higher purpose, for a higher goal. And I think that's something to really, just mention. Everyone, the people that created the music, everyone on your team, everyone is operating with a higher purpose. And I think you've mentioned this before about operating with no ego, which
that's half the battle, huh?
There we go. And I think that is also something that's really unique about what you all have done and are doing. And you also hear that in the music. Like it's not like one person is, trying to outshine or take the moment from it. Hear it feels like real connectivity, synergy. It's all blending together. Like, everyone's moving in the same direction. And I love
Obedience,
that as well.
obedience is greater than sacrifice. And I think that's something that I lead with. And I
Mhm.
also think that, when we were thinking about this project, we weren't conceptualizing a record deal. We were
Mhm.
just conceptualizing we got one shot. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, that one shot is predicated on the fact that everybody's bringing attention because Black people were killed 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And so we were like, if anybody's gonna take advantage of this moment, it needs to be the local, voices who are still here. And yeah, we just said like, yo, if we're gonna make a move in any shape within the industry, we have to hold each other, together. And so, yeah, obedience has always been, greater than sacrifice, and egos have not been an issue, and it's something that I haven't necessarily experienced ever.
The
Um,
ego's not being an issue.
yeah, just I mean, any space I've been in, that's always been there. But
Yeah.
for this project, I think it speaks to the executive team, the Chris Davis and St. Dominic and Steph Simon and Dalton. But yeah, I'm truly grateful just to be in this moment. And so you talk about this idea of community. Like for you, what does community mean to you?
Okay, but before we go to that, I wanted to ask you a question.
Go ahead.
That's okay. I want to ask, what was the conversation when you brought the artists together, right? Or presented this opportunity and talked about, because for everyone to gel and to operate with no ego, I wonder how, I want to know how it was approached. What did you say to everyone?
I think it was a mixture of a lot of the folks on the executive team. For me, I've only been in Tulsa for 2 years. I
Mhm.
was I was in Oklahoma City for 10 because of school. And so when I was presented this opportunity to EP this project, I was coming in like I gotta build trust because I don't want people thinking that I'm coming here to soak up the game and like be for myself. And if folks who know me know like I'm probably the most selfless person that you'll ever meet. And so, part of my responsibility was I remember getting phone calls from my boss, like, "Are you coming in today?" I said, "I'm working." He said, "Well, where are you?" I said, "I'm at artists' houses," because my purpose as a DJ and a producer and an educator and someone who holds a PhD is um, I knew I had an honor responsibility to like put this in the way it needs to be.
Mhm.
And part of it was I had to be a liaison between the artists and the organization that I worked for. And so I was getting punches from both sides. And so I think once we found out the plan um, of what we wanted to do as an executive team, we just stayed true to it. We picked the artists, not necessarily that were just the best. We picked the ones who fit the mindset of Black Wall Street.
Mhm.
Um, and so when we had those, pre-initial meetings, um, it was just like, yo, this is the plan, and
Mhm.
we all got to stick to it. And if you have issues with it, then maybe this is not the project for you.
Right.
Um, and so it was just very transparent, like very vulnerable.
Mhm.
Um, I told them that I will work my ass off to get whatever it is that is ours. I said when I see it, I'll know what it is. If
Mhm.
I just knew whatever it was coming, I knew exactly what it is. And Chris felt the same way. So it was just really just being open and honest, just building trust, um, and just getting them excited about, there's never been an opportunity where these artists have been together. Like we literally built a relationship between Tulsa and Oklahoma City. Like people were not necessarily collaborating. Like that was a weekend where they were like, "Oh, I can work with this person. Oh, you can produce for me. Oh, like it was a dope environment." Um,
So it was the first time people got that this was the connectivity for them through this project to bring.
we didn't have to change who we were. It was just like we were like even the name Fire Little Africa, we were already the fire that still burns. It was already in us. It was embedded in us. So like the whole project, it was just like, yo, you keep doing what you've been doing for the past 10 plus years. You've
Mhm.
been grinding. And I think that's the thing. Like with Steph Simon and others on this project, I get a lot of credit for Fire Little Africa. And I got a lot of it when the press release came out. And I just took a moment and I was like, yo, y'all gotta chill with me. Like, if it wasn't for 10 years ago,
Mhm.
like there would be no Fire Little Africa. So it's just me understanding that I have to always make sure that there's a shared governance with this project. There's no one bigger than anybody. So yeah, it was just like we didn't have to change who we are to make Fila. It was just like put your ego to the side. We all gonna level up at the same time,
Mhm.
and it was just a dope experience, truly dope experience. So,
That's awesome.
um, so I got two questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is, what do you want your legacy in the music industry to be when it's all said and done?
My legacy in the music industry. Um, I want my legacy to be that I made it better, right? That that I helped create change, that I created more opportunities for people that look like me. Um, and I've been a part of supporting incredible talent that made music that touched the world, brought people together.
I feel like you already have done that and are doing it now.
I think, my prayer has always been, because I'm in the music industry, we're in the entertainment game, and there's a lot that comes along with it, to never lose who I am at my core, right? Like to not lose that. And I am,
It's funny that you say that because a lot of people have been asking me how you feel about Motown, and I think I've thoroughly enjoyed the pandemic
mhm,
because it's allowed me to be just more present in the moment. Like I will, and people know this, I will think 20 years ahead.
mhm,
And the pandemic made me just kind of sit in the moment. And the one thing, I was not worried about the deal. I was not worried about the success, the increase. I was worried about losing myself. And it's just amazing to hear that, that's one thing that you would really focus on as well. So
yeah, I was exposed to a lot as a kid being in this game. And so I've seen so much. And again, have always been operating from my place of passion for this and knowing that there was a higher purpose for me being here also. And so just not losing that and operating, from an authentic and real place, and not losing myself along the way. And so I think it's all happening.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I, I was sorry, I was given this question. Talk about the South and how that influenced your work today. Does
Mhm.
Oklahoma sound like other Southern rap you've been around?
It reminds me of what influenced me when I talk about that organized noise era of music, which, it's all coming full circle. My daddy used to take me on drives every Sunday, and I used to make him drive me by because I knew exactly where it was, where the dungeon was.
Okay.
And it blew my mind because Outkast were these global hip hop superstars, you know, and they were making music right there, right? And so I understand with this project, I feel like it feels like that level of hip hop, and that's coming full circle because there's a whole movement in Atlanta, same thing. You know
Mm.
what I mean? So it feels like that.
Okay.
I hear it in the production. I hear it in the lyricism. It's storytelling at its best, wordplay. That's just so, it's what I love.
I'm gonna cry once you get off the Zoom call. Be like a
I'm being honest, and I think
yeah.
it's beautiful. I think it's really beautiful. I'm excited.
Last question. The mantra that we have is everything is us for Fine Little Africa. We use it to emphasize collectivism and
Mhm.
community and a culture that is free of ego.
Mhm.
When you hear the phrase "everything is us," what does that mean to you?
It kind of reminds me of something that my mentor Clarence Avant told me about 15
Okay, okay. For
years
for for
ago.
for, for those who don't know, please let the like you can't just like throw his name in there. Like, come on now, you gotta let the people know.
Yeah, Mr. Avant, Mr. Clarence Avant, the Black Godfather. Check out
Yes,
his documentary on Netflix if you're not
absolutely.
familiar. Yeah, I was blessed to meet Clarence 15 years ago. His catalog was administered through Universal Publishing, and he called me one day. He was coming to New York and was talking a lot of shit because he had heard about me, and we formed a friendship and a relationship that I'm very grateful for. He's been like a second father to me in many ways, and me moving to Los Angeles. But in the industry, he's also been an example of, you know, authentically moving through this industry and not compromising who you are. He is an angel on earth. He's incredible. But he would always tell me that there's it's about the power of responsibility. There is power in the power of responsibility. And so I always interpreted that we're representing our whole community when we show up, and there's a responsibility in that. So it's never about one individual. Um, and so everything is us makes me think of that it's about all of us. It's not about an individual or a solo game. It's for
When
all of
you
us.
when you pulling up to Greenwood,
I'm figuring out my dates. I got to get there very soon. I need it. Trust me. I want to come. Yeah, I want to come. I want to meet the artists. I want to meet all of you in person.
yeah, the
You know,
spirit gonna get you
I
soon
believe
as.
it. I believe it. I believe it. I believe it. I
Okay,
believe it. I'm
I'm
looking forward to it.
I am truly grateful for this hour. It's been a crazy week, and I needed this to edify myself, just to kind of keep going.
Me too,
Um,
by the way. So thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. So I just want to just say thank you again. Like, please let us know when you're coming to
Mhm.
Tulsa, and trust me, like the energy is on an all-time high right now. Like I'm seeing elderly folks like coming up to me like Motown, like they are elated.
Excited. Yeah. Okay. I love that.
Absolutely.
I love that.
So yeah, we definitely gonna do something special when you come to the town.
Okay.
We're gonna pull out the red carpet and we're gonna make sure that you truly get to see and feel what we feel each and every day. And
Mhm.
not even just the good, like the spirit, but even just the things that we're wrestling with and how we're overcoming that. So I'm truly excited for you to come. I appreciate you and your team for allowing us to do this. And I'm just looking forward to seeing what Fila and Black Forum and Motown will do for the world. So yeah,
Thank you,
appreciate
sis. Thank you. I'm honored and grateful.
it. Yeah.